Conversations was founded in 2012 and to open a critical path for a dialogue between art and science. We present many artists from many disciplines whose work resonates with science. We're interested in connecting art and science through programs, educational outreach, and public events like this one, which demonstrate the conversation and synergy between art, science, and technology. We're very excited this afternoon to be presenting a STEAM conversation. It's our second annual, Learning Through the Lens of Art and Science. We are doing that in partnership with Cambridge Creativity Commons in the guise of Kyle Brown, who will be leading our hands-on activity and who worked with me to make this possible. And we're joined by members of Descience, which is an amazing new organization which fosters collaborations and a new way to think about and fuse the languages of fashion design and science. Unfortunately, Descience founder Julianne who worked on this as well, can't join us this afternoon, but we're pleased to have strategic creative lead Julianne Gauron moderate an enlightening conversation with the winners of the Descience 2014 competition, Team Cytocouture, Carlos Villamil and Laura Indolfi. Following their conversation and participation with you all, you probably saw tables in the back. We're going to have a hands-on workshop that Kyle will oversee, and you'll have the opportunity to observe and experience how teaching them together can promote excitement and engagement in learning. So Julianne Gauron, I'll just give you brief bios, earned a master's degree in industrial design at RISD, Rhode Island School of Design in 2008, where she later taught the course New Products for Performance Sports and served on a 5-year academic advisory committee. She's had many various roles at the MIT Media Lab, including being a TA and the New Balance corporate liaison. She received a BA in History and Architecture from Bowdoin. Carlos Villamil is a Colombian multidisciplinary designer based in Boston since 2006. He has a background in industrial design and is working extensively in graphic design and marketing, as well as fashion and footwear. His international experience includes home appliance design for Whirlpool in Italy, co-founding and running an award-winning jewelry design company, and more recently designing accessories in Spain. In 2012, he obtained a fashion design certificate from Mass College of Art, and his personal focus is on experimental garment-based and zero-waste design, and I'm sure he'll talk about that more. He's currently studying at Harvard University towards a master's in sustainability and environmental management. Laura Indolfi is an Italian biomedical engineer, currently an entrepreneur in residence at MGH Cancer Center and a research associate with Harvard MIT Institute for Medical Engineering and Science. She holds an MS, BS in Material Science and Engineering and a PhD in Biomaterials from the University of Naples in Italy. Upon graduation, she joined the Harvard MIT Division of Health Science and Technology, working in the labs of Dr. Eliezer Edelman and Robert Langer on several projects spanning from devices for local drug delivery to tissue engineering approaches for cell therapies. She has hands-on business managerial experience and trained at the Sloan and Harvard Business Schools as well. She strongly believes in the power of outreaching initiatives to promote research awareness and foster the public audience's discovery of the beauty of science. So I'm going to let them continue, and here we go.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for having us. On behalf of Yuli and myself, I just wanted to say that Descience is really pleased to be here. And I'm very excited to be here with Carlos and Laura. Descience is fundamentally founded on the belief that design and science together have the power to innovate and create outcomes that alone neither could potentially create. And just to say on my behalf, for how I came to be in Descience, because my first experience actually of Descience was seeing these folks, their product walk down the runway along with 45 other creations that came down the runway last September. In my career as an industrial designer, I've worked on, gosh, too many innovation teams to count, but in industrial design, we always look to science for innovation, and I've always worked on products for extreme users and early adopters, whether it's medical consumers or military or new product innovations. So often, creativity, we can create and we can ideate and innovate, but then science often has a solution. So when I saw the fashion show at the Media Lab last September, and the beauty and then this science that was underpinning it and had given the solutions, I was just completely blown away. And then for me to see that these partnerships of joining a scientist and the designer together, fundamentally giving science a voice and an advocate, is something I personally very, very much believe in. And then also to partner together in a way that enables us as people to, the creative, the designer, yes, is trained, but follow your curiosity into science. And the designer who is, or sorry, the scientist who is, yes, trained as a scientist, but follow your curiosity and creativity into design. I think we all have that, and our culture has separated these two, and I think that's a STEAM conversation, of course. So immediately to science, it was like, I'm in. So that's my passion and how I came to be into science. That said, we're going to talk about what they produced and how they became the award winners. So how did both of you hear about Descience, and how did you come up with the name Cytocouture? Which was the first milestone you had to deliver.
Yeah. So I think I will start saying how I was aware of that and how I decided to join it. So it was.
You can speak up a little bit.
Yeah. So actually, it was by chance. Like, I almost all of my friends are scientists. Unfortunately, like we all have the same circle of friends. And I was lucky enough to live with another Swedish scientist that met Julie, the new Julie, that was the founder of this project. And we were at dinner one night, and they were starting to brainstorming about this idea. What do you think about joining the science with the fashion? And I found it was a great idea for many reasons. One, because they have many things in common, and the other one, as a scientist, there is this bias that scientists, they don't know nothing about fashion, and they wear ugly clothes, and there is this kind of stereotype and bias. So I thought that it was powerful on two levels, of bringing together two different fields, and also to make scientists appear cool to the normal people, and not like crazy animals that they are closing in labs. So I think that was driving me to work with the science.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm not wrong, I remember we were having this sustainable fashion exhibit in JP a couple of years ago, and I met Julie. She happened to attend the show, and she was the one who told me, well, I'm starting this initiative trying to get designers to work with scientists to come up with fashion projects out of their based on their scientist research. And she just said, I think you should participate. I was like, yeah, cool. It's a nice idea. And then she gave me her car or something. And then I think at some point I went to the website and saw that the first part was done, which was picking the 60 or something scientists that wanted to initiate the project. And then designers will come like in the second stage and look for scientists, let's say like in some sort of like a Match.com kind of setup. So when she invited me, I was unaware of what was the project about, but then afterwards, and I realized the level of scientists involved and everybody from like great institutions all around the world, taking the first step of saying, okay, my research I want my research to be part of this project. And that was very exciting to me. And that's when I say, okay, sure, this sounds like a great project, and I will apply, and here we are after the end of the project.
Yeah.
Talk about the name.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think in our many meetings when we were discussing the project, at some point we say, okay, come up with ideas and words and scientific words and design words and fashion words and terms. And I think we have this list of very long list of names and elements, and we end up picking Cytocouture because the connection with cells and the connection with fashion of haute couture and like handmade, one-of-a-kind projects. And I was very excited to learn Laura's research on how she seeds cells into these protein structures to give them like specific shapes. And I was thinking, well, that's just like draping fabric on a dress form. You have an instructor and you're applying.
I think that those are the
something to it.
pictures of our first talking.
Yeah, those are the sketches,
sketches.
And the things we were talking about when we were in a cafe or in Cytocouture was born.
Yeah.
A little louder.
Speak up a little louder. Yeah. Yeah, and to that point, so Laura, if you can tell us a little bit more about your scientific lab research.
Okay. So that's also another reason why I participate into the science, because so you can promote the science to the general
And if you can
public.
speak up a little bit more.
Even louder.
We have a big
Okay,
audience.
I'll try to scream as much as I can. Good. So what we do in the lab, as I was saying before, I am a material scientist, so I work on creating new materials or using material for application into the clinics. So one of the projects that was what the science and Cytocouture is about is creating materials that can change the behavior of the cells into a lab. So then we can decide how those cells can act before implanting them into the body that has some injury, to help the body regenerate itself in a faster and more controlled way. So all of my work is about architecture, like what kind of structure, what kind of architecture is needed for the cells to act in a specific way. And all of the picture that I applied for Cytocouture, they depict that. They depict the shape of the cells on different architecture and how that then in the lab can be characterized for biomedical application. And so that's the basic of what I do, one of the basic things that I do.
And so for you, was the designer application obvious, or was it something that you felt you had to sort of force for you?
Like in the process?
Yeah, so bringing your lab out of the science and into the creative world for you personally.
No, I don't think it was a forced thing. It came pretty naturally.
Yeah.
Like it was something, it was just a way of describing it in a different language.
Yeah.
But it came out pretty naturally.
Wonderful. And so Carlos, for you, what was it like for you as a designer to enter into Laura's world of science and science in general?
I think the most interesting for me was to be able to see like a real person representing science. You know, I think for designers, or if I want to say the public in general, if you're not related to the scientific world or you don't have a relative in that world, it's so foreign to you. It's like you can only imagine labs with closed doors, people wearing white coats and doing all kind of crazy stuff with equipment. And that is just one of the stereotypes, but it's very disconnected. So when I think the first time we sat together and we started talking, it was like, well, yeah, I can relate. I can see like what she's doing. It's not that different from what an artist will do when he's following a path, or like I'm exploring this material or I'm exploring this color. It's the same, but just using scientific method. But the concept behind is the creativity. I think it's the same. It's like it's somebody creating out of some ideas and some imagination. It's like, okay, I want this to happen. I don't know really why, I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'll keep trying. I'm going to keep trying. And it's all about being creative in order to use all those paths and get to that point when it's like, okay, I found the solution, or this is the answer for my question.
That's true. I completely agree. All right, so we had 45 other, or 44 other projects on the runway as well, and I'm going to see if I can do this without it being a total snafu. So we're going to show one other project because everyone had their different way of collaborating on the runway, and then we're going to come back to you. And this is Tal and Tatiana, if I can do this without a tech glitch.
What do you see?
For me, the fun part is to take something that you don't see, to see it all, or to see it big. Because that is what I do with my fabrics. I try to, from something small, create something big. Tal shared some of the microscopic pictures he had.
But that lets you see them a little bit better. These petri dishes are the inspiration for our collaboration, and they're filled with bacteria.
You can see all the texture here. The other one is just the flat part.
The kind of biology that I do is to reprogram bacteria to detect or treat cancer. So when you look at this dress, it's made up of a print of cancer cells taken from a microscope image. And when you turn the lights off, you can actually see that these small little sprinkles are these real fluorescent bacteria that are painted onto the print of the dress. It's a mix of glow-in-the-dark paint and bacteria.
We just thought, why not? Everybody's so afraid of bacteria, but in this case, bacteria is not bad. It's doing something healthy in a way. It's combating the cancer cells.
I developed this technology where you take a probiotic bacteria and you do a urine sample and you can test whether there's a tumor present in your body. And it's these bacteria that are on the dress, yeah.
Everything about this is exciting.
This collaboration has been an experiment in and of itself.
Try and error, try and error.
We just sort of played around together.
But when I was little by little putting it together, I saw the whole entire garment and I thought, oh, perfect.
So that was the Quorum 54 team, who also created a really, really beautiful, completely different product because every science, every partnership was different. You can see them on the Fashion Descience website in extraordinary depth, going through the science. It's amazing. Like, I'm still learning, and I've been involved for months and months, and it's phenomenal. But through the creative process, through the science, and then through bringing two people together, you get completely unique outcomes. So there were 61 teams originally from 47 cities around the world. So you had teams working remotely in many cases, and that also influenced how people collaborated as well. And so that's Tatiana and Tal's sort of collaborative process. And how would you, the two of you, sort of explain your collaborative experience and process?
We brainstormed a lot, and we were lucky to be in the same city.
Yeah.
So we actually trying to make appointments where we had breakfast over the. We were both very busy with our normal schedule, so it was really meeting for breakfast on a Sunday morning in a coffee place or after work for a happy hour, kind of let's get our brain and pick up each other's brain and see what comes up. So I think we were both of us were very hands-on, and correct me if I'm wrong. Like both of us had a say in what we were doing. At the beginning, it was just the first meeting. I was talking about what is being a scientist, what my work was about, and he was taking notes. And the next one, he was telling me about how we make the dress, what his mental process when he creates something. And then after that, they were more the two of us talking at the same time on how we wanted this moving forward. So
Yeah.
that's.
Yeah, I think it was very easygoing, like nice collaboration. Like we were able just to sit down together and say, what do you think? What's your idea? Do you think this makes sense? Do you think this doesn't make sense? And I was just trying to like show Laura ideas from the fashion world that somewhat can be connected to her research. And obviously at the beginning when you start, there is no, it's a total blank canvas. You have no idea. It's like, oh, what are we going to do? A shirt? We're going to do, I don't know, a long dress. It's going to be something for sports, or it's going to be something that is going to be a nightgown. So it was completely open to any interpretation. But that was also an interesting part of like how can you connect the two worlds and collaborate and come up with an answer? Because at the end, I think that was the also positive thing about the contest is like you have to deliver something, right? It cannot stay in a very vague, abstract, like, yeah, we're going to do a dress that somewhat is going to do this and this about this, and you show an illustration, but you actually had to create a functional garment. And yeah, we got to the point where Laura would go to my studio and cut fabrics and play with the little wooden mannequin.
I loved it.
and be able to actually experiment more than just giving me a scientific idea for me to take inspiration from.
Yeah. Did you have a breakthrough moment in the process?
I don't know if there was a breakthrough in terms of how we create the garment.
Or even getting to idea, and then, oh, it's that one.
No, not for me at least. Like I was following more of there was not really a breakthrough moment.
Yeah. I see that. I think the part that inspires me, maybe if it was a breakthrough moment, but inspired me the most was when she was explaining how different protein structures with different shapes will grow different cells. And I was thinking, well, maybe that's where the concept is, right? We didn't want it to be literal and say, let's take this image from her research and use the color or print it somewhere. I was thinking, what is the concept behind the whole idea? And it was these three-dimensional microstructures where the cells will grow with different shapes. And I think that was what grabbed my attention. And that was, I think, at the end was reflected in the garment we created. It's like this idea of something that takes the shape of whatever structure is applied to.
Yeah, so you actually sort of led into my next question, actually, which was that sort of Tal and Tatiana, they took the interpretation of literally taking the scientific matter and using it in the design, and then illustrating the science through the printing process onto the textile itself, flowing as it would under the microscope, which was a really great illustration of that science. Whereas I think the two of you did a really extraordinary thing where you literally manifested, if I'm gonna, you'll tell me if I'm right or not, but sort of, it seems like you literally manifested what the cells do in the design and style and format of the garment. Is that what you were intending to do, or am I right?
No, it's exactly right. Like, and that's, so probably going back to the previous question, what was the breakthrough? When we came up, as Carlos was saying, to that point of saying we can make a dress that change depending on who's wearing it and what type of structure he wants to make. So the piece of fabric is the same, and then you can wear it wherever you want, depending of your mood of that day, if you want a skirt or if you want a cape, or if you are a man or if you are a girl. And that was also another things that related to my line of research, because I work with endothelial cells, and those are cells that are in everybody's bodies. Like, it doesn't matter if you are a kid, if you are old, if you are a guy or a girl. So the ability to create a set of clothes that can be worn by everybody was kind of really representing the high level of the research that I'm doing, not the specific details. So I think we were...
Yeah, and I think the judges and...
Realize that.
the judges really, really grabbed onto that. So the last question that I would have for you, given the context of the STEAM conversation, Cambridge Science Festival, is would you recommend to other designers and scientists to participate in Descience or also just in science design collaborations in general? And how has this impacted your experience and your profession overall?
Well, I think absolutely yes. I think it's so interesting to see two separate worlds collaborating. And I think whenever you pair an artist as designer, someone that works in the creative fields with any other profession, that even if they're all creative, like they're not considered creative per se, I think you will always come up with the most interesting, innovative answers. I was talking with somebody the other day. It's like you can pair a lawyer with a designer, and I'm sure something interesting is going to come out of that. And not to say that the law school or law is boring, but it's like it's not connected. It's not considered something that you do on your creative space. So whatever you create, these like and similarly like not related connections, something interesting is going to happen. You might not don't know what or how, but it certainly. The designer working with somebody else will come up with something that he will never think alone, and the same. If this other person was working alone, will never have the same answer as like when working with a creative person.
So I think that's a really good moment to invite the audience to partake in this conversation. And maybe I'll just start a comment, which is what Descience is doing is very much in line with what Catalyst Conversations is doing. And I really feel that this synergy, there's a video. So this kind of synergy between art and science, I think it sort of brings science to the mainstream and art in that direction. So I think it's really fruitful, and I think it's really a model that I think universities and academic institutions are also starting to think about. So, anyway, maybe someone has a comment or a question.
So I was hoping you could talk more about the garments themselves and what's the next step. Will these become available?
That's a great question.
Well, yeah, I think that's part of the Descience initiatives, is that as the contest grows and the whole organization becomes stronger, I think the idea is like the results from these works will become support, like they will have some sort of support that will make them into a viable business. I think it's not very clear for us now, but we definitely see that there is potential to turn this idea into something that can become a business.
This is all in the spirit of democratization of science and art. Perhaps you could just make the patterns or the how-to available on the web. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, it's open to any idea, and that's what you said is a big part of the conversation, is to make science more visible. I think that was the main interest of Julie's idea, is like scientists only read each other's papers and they only go to Congress when they're all together. So like people like me will never learn about Laura's research if I was not working with her. And I think that's the background of maybe you can create garments that will tell scientific stories to the general public and make it more visible. Yeah.
Some of the partnerships have actually spun out into startups also. So that's a very, very exciting outcome as well.
Since we have so many youth in the room, I was wondering if you could say to the young people who are aspiring scientists or artists, and just in terms of your pathway against where you are.
Laura.
Okay.
That's for you, Laura. I think
That's for me. That's for me. Okay. So I think that. So my advice is to follow what you like. So as of a little bit of my background, all of my family, they are all lawyers. just as like everybody, from my mom and from my dad's side. I always wanted to be a scientist. Like I destroyed the vacuum cleaner at home just to put back together again. And there was always some pieces that came out and my mom was following me in the house, like you broke that again. But that was, I like it. Like I liked to play with things, and I was lucky enough to be in an environment where I could do what I wanted. Like when I applied for being an engineer, there were only 5 girls into the class, and they were a class of 35. So I think that's also why I want to be involved into outreaching initiative, just to say that girls can do whatever they want and guys can do whatever they want. Like there is not a bias, and if you are an engineer or a scientist, it doesn't mean that you cannot be passionate about fashion and other things. Like you just need to follow what you want, and then everything will come from there.
Yeah, and I would actually jump in on that too, because from the creative side, I came from a family of lawyers too, actually.
So probably all the creativity comes in one.
Yeah, I didn't know about the creative route. Lawyers and bankers and teachers who are lovely. And I didn't know that I had a chance to be a creative professionally, honestly. And it worked out through the wonderful wandering of my path, but it wasn't until college that I knew that there was a way to be creative, and what I saw as play was something I could do professionally. And now there are so many ways to find that out at a really young age, that things that, you do for fun, that, I was making these architectural sketches for fun, or building little houses for our pet mice, and constantly. And it turns out I could have been doing that for a career, but I didn't know. And it took me a while to get there, and now I think there are a lot more avenues to explore. And one of the best pieces of advice I got a lot later in life was just ask everyone questions, ask questions constantly. And now that I'm a teacher too, I realize that if you go out there at any age, including mine, older, younger, and you ask questions and you ask people their story, everyone wants to tell their story. They're excited about their story. So if there's something you want to learn about, or you think you might want to pursue, whether it's science or design or fashion or law or whatever, go ask people, because generally people are really receptive and will tell you their story and are happy to talk about themselves. We all are. So go ask, because it might be the thing for you, or it might not be the thing for you, and you'll find that out that day. So, yeah.
Like for infants, it's like they say you stimulate children when they're very young. So what approach would you use to combine the science and the art for your very young child?
Can you repeat the question first?
Yes, so how to stimulate and how to combine the science and the creativity for young child. And I'm not really sure how to answer.
That's a unique question.
Actually, that might be a Kyle. Kyle is involved in doing art and science with pretty young students, so maybe you could answer.
So is that, sorry, the question?
The creativity and science for the very young, like really infant young.
Oh.
I work with more, I guess, middle school, but I think it comes down to, once again, and what I have sort of set up for this activity today, this creative process and exploring, and I think it's just allowing, kind of what you're saying, allowing that play to happen.
Yeah.
And so and I think at that very young age, the children don't necessarily know whether it's science or art, and I think it's just allowing them to delve into whatever they're kind of pawing into, and I think there are just multiple ways by giving different tools. So like I have set up here, I'm just going to tell you since I have soapbox.
But actually, you know what? Come forward, Bill.
Okay.
We're going to do the hands-on part very soon.
Yeah.
Kyle's going to explain it.
So thank you all for coming, first of all, and thank you to the speakers. So Like Deb said, I direct a program called the Cambridge Creativity Commons, and one of the things that we've been focusing on the last couple of years is I'm a visual artist, and I've been working with science teachers to think about integrating art into science to enrich creativity in the classroom in and out of school. So one of the main things that I've seen as an overlap is this process between art and science. And I saw a couple slides up here thinking about the inspiration or imagination, thinking about what tools and materials you're going to use. Then what about just the actual creating? And then you have to experiment, and then you might fail, but then you try again, and then you experiment, and so you go through these different, what are called iterations. And then there's maybe a critique process where you share your work and get feedback. Say, what is this all about? And then the final exhibit, which might be an art exhibit, it might be a fashion show, it might be in a science journal. And so what I have back here in these tables are these different tables with a inspiration. So I've laid out some images that you can look at for inspiration to imagine what you might make. So I have science concepts, weather, patterns in nature, and also some things to do with the human body. And then on the next table, there are materials. So take a look at what materials might I use to create something around the certain science concept I chose. And I do have pencils and paper at that first table that you can start sketching or making notes. The third table is where you actually create. So I have supplies and materials for you to actually think about how can you create something based on this original science concept. And then your work that you made, if you'd like to leave it here or just show it off while we continue to talk. And I also wanted to highlight that I have a group of students here from the East End House that are going to be exhibiting their kinetic sculptures that they've created over the last 5 or 6 weeks that are going to be at the table in the back. So please ask them questions about their process, and they're excited to show their work today.
Okay, so thank you so much. And I think maybe people might be interested over here with Carlos, so we can
Please
also
do come up.
come up over here.
Yeah.
And then kids and adults can go back there, and Kyle will go back there. And
Kids of all ages.
Kids of all ages. And just to let you know, our next Catalyst event is Monday, April 27th, over at the Bartos Theater at MIT. And Alberta Chu and Murray Reynolds are going to be talking about something called Face Topo. They've developed, or they are developing, a project and trying to capture the genome of all the faces in the world. So they've just developed this, and we're going to talk about it together. So thank you very much for coming, and please stay for